What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, insane people, and all that kind of stuff. And as usual, we'll be checking out some more Reddit posts. So be sure to share your thoughts about today's stories down in the comments, and we're getting right into it. Entitled neighbor caught by his own police call. So a few years back, I, 20 male, had a small 2-room flat in a very old building in which you could hear everything. My bedroom was right next to the wall of my neighbor's 27 male flat. He was a stupid lunatic who always played video games until 4 or 5 a.m., and he had some kind of problem with losing in multiplayer. So every time he would lose, he would start screaming, throwing things around and punching the wall, waking me up almost every night. At the time I was doing 2 jobs and needed every second of sleep I could get. I tried talking to him on several occasions, but nothing helped. One time when I was out for work, I even left my sound system running a mix of artillery and machine gun barrages, just to show him how annoying this stuff could be. But as entitled people are, it didn't do any good. Fast forward a few months and nothing improved, and I was getting crazy about this. One Saturday night, I had a little poker game running in my flat with a few friends, and my neighbor was having one of his usual tantrums. Since I had guests and they didn't like, we turned up the music. Everybody listened to something different, so there was a good mix of death metal, techno, industrial, and hardcore. My neighbor was furious at some point and apparently called the police to file a noise complaint. Luckily, when they pulled up, one of my guys saw them driving up as he was out for a quick cigarette. Now comes the fun. We turned the music down before they came up, so when they rang the doorbell and I opened, they could not hear anything too noisy. Just a few guys having some beer and a little poker game. They told us there was a noise complaint from a neighbor, saying it was too loud and that this was something constant. We told them we've been like this for hours. Then I had a genius idea. I asked them if my neighbor called them, which of course they couldn't answer, but I knew what was what. So I invited the 2 cops in and told them I'd show them what real noise disturbance looked like. I led them to my bedroom where one could still hear my neighbor throwing tantrums, and I told the cops the whole story. And since they were already here, that I would like to file a noise complaint against him. The cops were shocked at the noise you could hear from the other flat, and went directly over to his flat to tell him to shut the hell up, and that he would get reprimanded by written letter to keep the noise down and don't call the police for false emergencies. I had a huge laugh as the cops came back to tell me to call them when he did something like this again, because in that case I would be able to file charges. So long story short, he thought the police would shut me down. Instead, it was the other way around. I never slept better than that night, and finally I had some peace at home. You want the server down during business hours? You got it. I used to work IT at a mid-size logistics company. Our warehouse ran 24/7, but the corporate office was open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I was responsible for maintaining the internal server that handled everything from payroll to inventory management to shipping labels. One Monday morning, I got an email from a higher-up, let's call her Karen, demanding that we take the server offline immediately for scheduled maintenance. Now I had scheduled that maintenance for Sunday evening, sent out 3 notices, and got no objections. But Karen hadn't read those emails and was now insisting we do it right now, during her work hours. I replied, taking the server offline during business hours will temporarily halt access to the shipping system, inventory, time tracking, and payroll processing. Confirm you'd like me to proceed. She replied, and I quote, yes, you should be working on my schedule. Get it done now. Alright, malicious compliance time. I looped in the warehouse manager and let him know the system would be down per Karen's urgent request. Then I pulled the plug at exactly 10:30 a.m. Within 15 minutes, the office was in chaos. No one could clock in or out, print labels, track shipments, or even check inventory levels. Phones were ringing off the hook. The CFO stormed into my office asking what the hell was going on. I just showed him the email thread. Less than 30 minutes later, Karen came to my office, red-faced and yelling. I calmly pointed out that she had approved the server downtime in writing despite warnings. I offered to restore access early, but reminded her it would take time to reboot and check for errors from the forced shutdown. Fallout? Oh yes. She got dragged into a meeting with the COO and CTO that afternoon. From what I heard, it didn't go well for her. After that, all urgent IT requests from management had to go through a change management process with multiple approvals. I also got a little bonus on my next paycheck for handling the outage with professionalism. Sometimes the best way to teach someone why we have procedures is to let them break one. once. Am I the a-hole for telling an autistic person that their disability isn't an excuse for not paying for services rendered? I work as a server in a restaurant. A couple of nights ago, I had a couple in their 30s come in around 2 a.m. As I took their order, the husband mentioned that all the food had to be on separate plates for his wife, as she is autistic and will not eat the foods that share the same plate. They then proceed to order. She wanted a kids' meal, however, restaurant policy states that kids' meals can only be bought for kids. I explained this policy and explained that everything on the kids' menu is available to adults for a slightly higher price. Combined, it all came out to about $1.50 more in price. The husband agrees, and I send the order to the kitchen. We are a little busier than normal as it's homecoming weekend, and we have lots of big parties. About 20 minutes pass, and the husband flags me down and states that his wife is having a panic attack and they need to pay for their drink and leave. I ask for 1 second to make the kitchen aware that their order is no longer needed, and he agrees. When I go to the kitchen, I'm told the food is already prepared, so I ask for it to be boxed up to go. I return to the floor, explain that the food has been prepared and I am having it boxed to go for them. The wife then states because of her panic attack she will not be able to eat. I explained that I am sorry that she had a panic attack, but as they came into the restaurant, ordered the food, and that it was already prepared, they would be expected to pay for the services rendered. However, I would comp their drinks if they would like. She then asked why she should have to pay for food she wouldn't be able to consume, and I simply stated that once the food was ordered and cooked, the company required compensation for services rendered, and that even if they were to stay in the restaurant and not eat any of the food and leave it at the table, they would still be expected to pay for what they ordered. She then reiterated that she had a panic attack and that I should have recognized she was having a medical episode, to which I replied that I am a server and not a trained medical provider, and that if she was being escorted out of the restaurant on a stretcher, then I would make an exception. But as she was currently speaking with me coherently, I failed to see how her medical condition warranted her not paying her bill. Today I received a complaint that they filed with our corporate office, saying that I discriminated against them by making them pay for food that the wife wouldn't be able to consume, due to her having a panic attack induced by her autism. However, I would have done the same with any other customer regardless of who they are. I actually think that making an exception for them solely because she is disabled would be a form of discrimination, as I would be treating her differently than I would treat others solely because of her disability. So my question is, am I the a-hole for not making an exception, or did I do the right thing by having them pay for the food they ordered? So first off, I do believe that we should be able to make accommodations and exceptions for those with special needs, both in a moral and legal sense. But this whole situation here just doesn't really seem to fit in that kind of circumstance. Kind of the big giveaway here is that she was still in the restaurant trying to argue about getting out of the bill the whole time. OP even said that she said in the past tense that she had a panic attack, and if she really couldn't eat because of it, then why not just take it home for later? But also in their defense, they were just trying to leave without having had any food, and they weren't trying to take the food with them. It didn't even seem to leave the kitchen yet. So it doesn't really seem like they were trying to scam the restaurant or anything either. And this comment here also says, as someone that has had a panic attack, you can't argue that much with that much clarity while having a panic attack. Also, as someone with autism, she likely just got overstimulated and wanted to leave. That's her response and her issue. She still needs to pay. Even if they wanted to leave because she was overstimulated, that's totally acceptable. But I don't get why they didn't want to just pay for the food and take it to go. Anyway, all that stuff aside, it really should not be the server's job to argue about it. Just go get the manager, let them deal with it. I don't get why the server would have to argue about this kind of thing on the company's behalf. Neighbor damaged her car on my landscaping rocks. I own a property on a narrow street with a strip of grass between the sidewalk and the curb. Everyone parks up on top of the strip and digs out deep tire ruts in my grass. So to keep the street more clear, they pull partially up onto my lawn. The resulting tire ruts fill with water, become muddy, and breed mosquitoes all summer long. It's unsightly, and the flies are a major pain in my ass. So I found some large rocks, large enough to need a hand truck/dolly to move them. But I used these boulders to block off the parking so nobody could park on my lawn. Put them right next to the curb line. I purchased new soil, grass seed, mulching hay, fertilizer, etc. It took about a month, but the ruts are filled in. New grass is growing and it looks 10 times better. Plus no more insect breeding ground. It looks very much like this. or this. My neighbor, who I long suspected was one of the cars damaging my lawn, spoke to me one day. She was pissed I had put the rocks there. She says I should have said something to them or warned them. She went to park, presumably as she always did, drove up onto my lawn to get out of the street. She didn't expect the rocks to be there and scratched and dented her front and side of the car. She was pissed and hinted that I should pay for that. She mentioned the previous owner let cars park there and that I should continue the tradition. Short summary of the convo. I told her it's not against city code to put the boulders there. I said my property is not for others to park on. There were years of damage I repaired from all the previous parking. I also refused to pay for body damage from her own careless driving while trying to park where she should have never been in the first place. Next time she should pay attention to where she is parking. Nor do I care what the previous owners did, and I am certainly not putting up a sign warning about rocks. She was pissed, to say the least. She gives me the evil eye every time she sees me. Some guy storms up to me and says, I need extra towels in 402, right now. I was waiting in the lobby of a hotel for a friend to come down. I was wearing black pants, a white button-up, and holding my phone. Pretty standard outfit. Some guy storms up to me and says, I need extra towels in 402, right now. I smiled and said, sorry, I don't work here. He narrowed his eyes, looked me up and down and said, then why are you standing behind the desk? Because the desk was just a high counter table with chairs. I was literally scrolling Instagram. I stood up, showed him my backpack and said, because it's a chair, not your personal helpline. He huffed, went to the actual front desk, where the staff were wearing heavy blazers with name tags, and loudly complained about your employee ignoring me. The front desk clerk looked at him, looked at me, and said, sir, she doesn't work here. And even if she did, snapping at people isn't how you get towels. Best part, his wife walked up behind him, smacked his arm, and said, you're embarrassing me again. Anyway, that's going to be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more Reddit content like this. Take care, friends, and I'll see you next time.